All right. Yeah, we've been in basically like a lull, and on our last show we kind of talked about this, where Bitcoin's direction as to like where it is right now is kind of in this like confusing spot, where the L1 actually goes and where the L2 scaling solutions go. Obviously, businessman who's in the audience right now is very much pro fractal from a liquid trade perspective, and I don't think I disagree a lot. Fractal is one of those original meta protocols which was building on Bitcoin. Um, I would say Unisat obviously owned the BRC20 standard and built a business around it, which led into this side chain of Fractal, which is very similar to an L2, but it's more of like a side chain in its performance and its direction. Lorenzo on the Ordinal show yesterday was mentioning that there's like multiple ways to bridge into the ecosystem, which again, it's a friction point from the users. But I think we can't necessarily say that Fractal and some of these meta protocols, but specifically Fractal, is one where the East and West both converge. How long that remains is a different story. Much like we saw with BRC20, it was basically two booms and busts that lasted 3 to 4 weeks at a time. But obviously, we've had a massive inflection point with BRC20 then getting listed on exchanges. But now we have runes, and I guess I just wanted to kind of open up the floor a little bit and see what people are thinking. Is this going to be like the reinflection point of BRC20 for the industry? A lot of the pushback on runes is quite honestly related to the fact that Casey hasn't really done anything much with them other than make a standard, and hasn't necessarily inspired a lot of the degeneracy that Unistat inspired, primarily with the fair launches and so forth, which gave the degens like myself and others in the audience a game to play. So I'm kind of curious as to these games tend to be what the on-chain users play, but it also means that the whole Bitcoin ecosystem starts to get more and more fragmented. And after speaking with like Yago and Bitcoin OS, obviously they're trying to do a bit of a solution for that, as a problem only grows potentially bigger, as we have more standards, more meta protocols, more L2s, and so forth. So, Yago, thanks for joining. I'll just start with you, just because you mentioned that you only have about half hour or 20 minutes from here, but want to learn more about Bitcoin OS, and what you guys are doing with everything related to it.
Sure. So I think we keep coming back to the same problem, or the same two problems with Bitcoin again and again and again. And it doesn't matter, what we're looking at. It could be ordinals, BRC20, fractal, side chains, drive chains.
You
The
forgot
truth
merge
is,
mining.
merge mining. Well, side chains have, some of them have been merge mined. Um, the reality of Bitcoin remains, for most people, that it is an extremely limited protocol, and that is its biggest strength, right? We've got a whole bunch of projects out there that are trying to be software, and succeeding very well, right? Ethereum is software, Solana is software, everything else is software. Basically, crypto is software. And what I mean by software is I mean stuff which is constantly changing, has devs that are constantly updating it, is inherently, as a result, unstable, and inherently grows more and more complex over time. Whereas, practically every single system that has launched since Bitcoin has taken that path in an attempt to try and answer the question what Bitcoin cannot do. And there's many things that Bitcoin cannot do, but no project has attempted to meet or exceed Bitcoin's invention of an entirely new thing, which isn't hardware and which isn't software, but which is permaware, something which is going to remain simple, a set of rules that are unchanging, and that you know that you and your children and your grandchildren and probably your grandchildren's grandchildren are all going to be using exactly the same system. And that is an extremely powerful thing in the world of digital, because it's only Bitcoin does that. And not only does only Bitcoin do that, but any serious financial thing, be it long-term savings, um, a retirement fund, a mortgage, infrastructure investments, bonds, you name it. Companies last for hundreds of years. So they're, even the idea of tokenizing their stock, it has to be on a system which is going to last hundreds of years as well. Okay, so that is like miles away from the problems that you were talking about, which is the biggest current use case in crypto, which is basically the world's best casino. And um, and so that's where sort of Bitcoin has had trouble, right? Or it struggles, because what Bitcoin doesn't have is programmability. It doesn't have bleeping lights, and most importantly, it doesn't have the ability to trustlessly use BTC and other Bitcoin native assets in programmable environments. And we've tried so many different things. But until we tackle that, none of those things are going to have longevity. None of them are going to be substantial. They're all sort of POCs. And this is the problem with ordinals, and it's the problem with BRC20. Those are not programmable tokens, right? When you launch a meme coin or any token on Solana, Ethereum, etc., it's programmable. You can build the games on chain, and there's an infinite variety of potential games, and they're composable, these games. So that has been the case with Bitcoin up until just a few weeks ago. A few weeks ago, um, in block 853626, a significant change came to Bitcoin, which was the fact that for the first time, we verified ZK proof in Bitcoin. And what happened in that block is, by verifying ZK proof in Bitcoin, Bitcoin now got eyes to the world and a brain for programmability. And we can now condense any type of programmability into a succinct proof, into a ZK proof, and we can turn that into a Bitcoin transaction. And so to demonstrate this, what we did is we created a new kind of UTXO, which had no owner. It was controlled by a smart contract, but it had BTC, and it also issued an ordinal. And then we were able to arbitrarily move those to addresses on the basis of compute that occurred off-chain, and we did it trustlessly. So what this means is that we now do have the key primitive of programmability in Bitcoin. And over the next few months, we're going to need to figure out how to use it to basically build anything we want on Bitcoin. We effective, we sort of, to be annoying to maxis, we call this the first permissionless Bitcoin upgrade. But in many ways, I think that's a true description. And it's a particular kind of upgrade which allows any developer to basically upgrade Bitcoin in any way they want. And so coming back to sort of your original question, what do we need to see for ordinals, BRC20s, or really any Bitcoin token standard to really take off and to be able to do so with longevity? It needs to become programmable. And so that's one of the big things that we're working on now. And we've been talking to people from the BRC20 ecosystem, slightly less from the Runes ecosystem for whatever reason, around being able to provide them with effectively the primitives that are required so that those token standards can become programmable money.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I know when we talked on the phone the other day, um, we kind of mentioned like the base layer should be the issuance layer of any asset, right? Like that's probably the most important part. If we just follow like the Ethereum model, I had a tweet on this like last week where, um, you have ERC20 assets that are issued on ETH, and then they make it over to the L2s. But because all of these are ERC20, standards, they all seem to be like very interoperable with one another. All of them run on EVM chains. And as we start to have more competitiveness in the space, obviously we have approaches like Arch, which are going down the L1, L1.5 expressivity model, which, I think is very interesting. We have builders building scalability solutions, ZK rollups and so forth, which I think are, it's an incredibly valuable research angle as well. But I couldn't agree more with what you said. There is things have to be programmable. At the end of the day, the users are largely speculators at this point in time. But it allows you to program games and build models around it. Now, even despite not having programmability and so forth, it's not like we haven't necessarily seen games with runes or rather distributions of runes or even ordinals themselves where people kind of gamify the experience. And I think that's like part of the fun, right? Like if the users on chain aren't necessarily having some fun, speculating and so forth, I think it's very difficult to retain them because they'll just go to Solana where they can have more fun, or they can go back to Ethereum and maybe lose more money. But Sovereign, obviously, with control, actually had like a very interesting model, and I think a lot of people are kind of questioning what the heck these cards are to do with. Obviously, Sovereign, you guys gamified the experience of the ordinals themselves. With the whole wrap and unwrap, half wrap, full unwrap, and so forth of the reveal element to it. Yeah, what can you give some alpha on like what these cards are?
So the
Yeah,
sovereign.
sure.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry,
Uh,
Yago.
I thought you were
do you
referring
want to
to,
go
yeah.
ahead?
So
Oh,
please.
sorry. Yeah, I mean, we can chat more on the. Sorry, I didn't mean to pivot too much. Yago, for I guess the audience here, like I guess with broader expressivity on the base layer happening, and maybe like these L2s, one of the biggest challenges that we're going to have is fragmentation of attention and liquidity. And I guess how do we look to solve this problem to not become too ETH like, because that's ultimately like one of the biggest issues with Ethereum is you basically have this fragmentation of liquidity, and then you have developers building layer zero solutions, omni-chain solutions. Yeah, curious how we solve like the fragmentation of standards between all of the meta protocols, be it Glitter, be it BRC20, Fractal, yeah, Tap, Atomicals, and so forth. Like how do we solve the fact that none of this at this point in time plays nicely with one another?
Okay, so first of all, with regards to sovereign, very interested to hear your answer. I thought you were asking me the question. With regards to composability and interoperability, one of the interesting things that has happened with um, the Ethereum approach to modularity is, Ethereum was going for ultrasound money. It was trying to flip in Bitcoin, and um, and sort of that was the goal that the community had in its mind. And instead, where it finds itself is in the very dismal situation of actually now just trying to defend its position from Solana. And the reason this happened is because of the way that Ethereum moved forward with modularity. Modularity is definitely the way that systems and blockchains in particular should scale. You scale in layers. But every single new rollup that has been launching on Ethereum has its own bridge. Because it has its own bridge, it becomes its own world, and it ends up creating these small little silos of users, of user experience, and perhaps most importantly, of dApps and liquidity. Now, in Bitcoin, unfortunately, we're starting to see something similar, right? We're seeing it with the different token standards, and we're seeing it with the various meta protocols that are launching. I think the way that we can avoid that is by having a system which is compelling because it provides network effects and which allows these different systems to meta protocols that we have in Bitcoin, standards that we have in Bitcoin, effectively to use a mainnet as a settlement layer in a way which provides a communication layer. So it turns Bitcoin mainnet into not just settlement, but also communications and bridging between these different systems. So to a great extent, that's what we're trying to deliver with Bitcoin OS. So, you guys have Arch Network here. And one of the ways that Arch Network have constructed their system is they are creating what are effectively these multi-sigs, which control different execution environments. And that is, without the ability to create trustless bridging, there's no way around that. At the same time, there's, this project Fedi, and they're effectively doing the same thing. The different execution environments for Chaumian transactions that use these different multisigs. And then you have different rollups that want to sort of utilize Bitcoin, and they have their own bridging solutions. What we're trying to build is a system that can be consumed by Arch, can be consumed by Fedi, can be consumed by different rollups, that allows them to settle their transactions in a way which is composable with transactions on these other platforms, so that when a user is using Bitcoin, they're using a single platform rather than it feels like they're skipping from one thing to another. Now, we're only building part of the solution. And the part of the solution that we're building that we call Bitcoin OS is sort of like the OS side of it, right? The the communication layer and the trustless bridging that these different projects can consume. What we will also require is wallets to become aware of these different systems, because otherwise the wallets will act as sort of like the point of fragmentation. But I think that because with Bitcoin, there actually doesn't, because Bitcoin itself does not have smart contracts, and because what we are building when we are building out these Bitcoin OS bridges, we say plural, but it's actually just a single one. We actually have a huge advantage over Ethereum because this entire bridge system, this bridging system, would be shared. It would be a shared resource for all of these different projects. And that means that the projects become far more aligned with each other. The growth of one will promote the growth of another in a way which does not currently occur on Ethereum. It will mean that users will have greater access to the entire pool of dApps and liquidity. And I think that this at least gives us a strong shot at leapfrogging the problems that of modularity that Ethereum currently has. So we're working on the technology, but we're also, like by coming to spaces like this, trying to let more people know that over the next few months, we're going to be looking to roll out the different pieces of this puzzle, and developers who are interested in this space are we'd love it if you guys contact us so that we can start working together.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Yago. Appreciate you coming up here and sharing exactly what, I think people were curious. Ultimately, when I saw like the ZK transaction, or the verified proof on chain, I think, it was an exciting moment. But people were obviously curious as to like what the heck you guys are doing, if it's just another L2, or if there's, a broader plan at hand. So appreciate you coming up here, and sharing exactly, what you guys are working towards. Yeah, I wanted to maybe just pivot the topic a little bit, and kind of build upon that. Is you're right. Like, people go to net new environments and, just other places simply when there's more expressivity and games being played. we kind of saw like the most fun game, in my opinion, from like a game theory mechanic, and it reminded me a lot like what Ethereum DeFi Summer and DeFi was all about. Is this speculative game of game theory and playing against everyone else, and in some ways being a the greater fool in some cases. Arctic is one of the one of the runes that has recently performed very well, at least from the lows, not necessarily from the peaks. I think we're still broadly down bad, but obviously more games, both on the L1. I expect games to occur using Arch Network, and maybe it'll be similar to what Matt mentioned on the last spaces. But I think when you have broader expressivity, the interest from developers becomes more creative, and the speculation from degens becomes far greater. Another really fun game that happened, and kind of going back to Sovereign from Seize Control now, not Yago Sovereign, because I know Yago's worked on Sovereign decks. But yeah, Seize Control with their second drop, no ordinal or no ordinary kind, kind of gamified like the ordinals experience, and brought fun back into the table. Sovereign, if you wanted to just touch on like maybe like just giving us a highlight of, what you're seeing go down on the ordinal side. I think everyone just wants to have fun again, and L1 hasn't been fun in a while. So yeah, help us out.
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up if you can. My connection's a bit spotty. Okay, cool. Yeah, I actually really found what Yago was saying fascinating, and I agree with a lot of it. I think that when we approached this, the second drop that we were making, and contending with the issue of how do we take art and a project that's known to be an art-based project into something that is a PFP project, and also how do we harness um, all of the functionality and the excitement around runes, we decided to take a slightly different approach to it. Rather than doing something which was trying to push or make Bitcoin do something which it is really not ready to do, we decided to use Bitcoin as it currently is and really leverage it to create something which really kind of leveraged or told the human story behind Bitcoin and behind crypto. As a project, we think a lot about the human experience and what is the emotion behind crypto, what keeps us all engaged, what keeps us all in this space, what keeps us all trying to what keeps us all here, as an industry, or as a, let's say, as a collective. We faced enormous challenges. We've been laughed out of town every time we've said that our coins are going to replace the centralized financial system. We've been almost regulated out of existence, but here we are, still forging ahead, trying to make something happen with decentralized technology that we really believe in. And so, we really wanted to A, tell that story, but B, we wanted to use the state of Bitcoin as it currently is, with its block times, 10-minute block times that they currently are, to really delve into natural human tendencies of curiosity and just surprise, and also just being in control, right? And so when we launched the collection, we started right at the pre-reveal image. Normally, the pre-reveal images in collections are triggered by projects themselves. So you buy something, it has a standard pre-reveal image across everything, and then one day the project wakes up and flicks a switch and everything reveals your PFP. And so we wanted to turn that really onto its head in two different ways. Firstly, the pre-reveal image of an ordinary kind has the rarity baked in right from the get-go. So when you mint or when you buy on secondary, whatever that pre-reveal image is, it gives you a hint or a suggestion towards what level of rarity you are buying. And so this is another element of our thinking where we wanted to meet the market where it currently is. I mean, I think that your audience and all of us here can agree that speculation is a large part of the industry right now, and it powers a lot of It powers a lot of DeFi. It powers a lot of whatever happens in the space. And so for us as an art-based project, we really wanted to make this project something that appealed to everybody that is participating in the space. And that includes the speculators. And so right from the get-go, we wanted to make this collection something that was tradable. And then when it comes down to the reveal process itself, we really spent a lot of time trying to create a mechanism that put control back into the hands of the collectors. And so here, we wanted to really co-opt Bitcoin's slow block times. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. We wanted to meet Bitcoin where it is. And so that feeling of opening up a Christmas present or waiting for something and basically using Bitcoin's block times as a way of enforcing delayed gratification at a time when we're all becoming used to instant dopamine hits. That was something that was very compelling to us. And I think that we've managed to do that. If people are incredibly excited about the fact that, you can go out on Magic Eden and you can buy one of these fully wrapped condoms and you have no idea what's inside. And at each level of rarity, whether you buy the greens or the hollows or the rare gold ones, at each level of rarity, you have the chance of hitting the lottery. If you unwrap one of those yourself, it could be a very rare PFP that's lying inside. And the market response has been absolutely tremendous. And I think the reason why that is because we are, as you said, making Bitcoin fun again. We're kind of activating the emotional side of crypto. At Control, we call ourselves feel something specialists, and so it's really, getting people excited and returning the emotion back into crypto, which is really activating people. And then we didn't really stop there. So unwrapping a condom delivers a card into your wallet as part of the unwrap mechanism. And so this then kicks off a whole other round of speculative behavior. The cards themselves are beautiful. I mean, Penny has absolutely hit the ball right out of the park, not just with the PFP art, but with the pre-reveal art. And then the art on the cards is really outstanding. These cards will then kick off what we call an on-chain slow game of poker that's going to roll out over the course of this year, and we're in the process of building out a really awesome front end for this, where people will be able to see all of their knocks, all of their cards. There's going to be lots of fun, different kinds of rune multipliers. We've got some great ideas with what to do with the Joker cards, which are very, very rare indeed. And so in all of these different ways, we've tried to, again, as I said before, we've tried to meet Bitcoin where it currently is, and just return the emotion back into crypto, and then just really kind of, talk about the human experience. No Ordinary Kind is about all of us that are still here. As I said earlier, we've all faced tremendous challenges and we're still here. And so that's also why the partnership with Violetta is really important for us, because we really want to tell the human side of this crypto story. I think that gets lost in the wash a lot of times while we're talking about L2s and scalability, all of which is of course incredibly important. But I think underlying all of that, I think the human story really stands out above everything. And so our partnership with Violetta is really telling the story of No Ordinary Kind and showing examples of other No Ordinary Kind people out there. The first season was with Penny himself, and that was actually her decision to do that. The second one is with Rare Skrilla, who I'm sure you guys will all agree is just an absolute pioneer in the space. And then we've just secured a participant for season 3, which I'm super, super, super pumped for. I can't really reveal who it is yet, but really, really excited for that to roll out next month.
Yeah, no, super cool. No, I appreciate what you guys are doing, and yeah, especially the little pups video game, which was much loved by the community. Yeah, I brought up Eric here because Eric's just a master degen. I mean, he's played around with basically everything, UTXO based tokens on Doge. I believe Atomicals, Tron inscriptions, if I'm not mistaken, as well, and everything under the sun. Yeah, he's been quite an interesting builder of marketplaces for these tokens, and yeah, Eric, I wanted to just get your take on like, you know, last year we had Meta Protocol galore, and it seems like we're kind of coming back to that era again. What are you kind of most excited about these days on the Meta Protocol side? What are you building next, man?
What's up? What's up, Joe? Thanks for the introduction. I've just been sitting back, paying attention right now. I'm excited because there's more builders coming into Bitcoin, right? So that's always exciting to see. Kind of see where anything goes. Right now, working a little bit of things on Doge still. Have a mobile wallet kind of ready to go on that side of things. We haven't dropped yet. If you're familiar with the Radiant blockchain, kind of been cooking up some stuff on that side of things. I don't know, just farting around, dude, while the shit chops to see what happens. Right, people are still building on Atomicals, so taking that a little bit at a time, and just going from there. So excited to see more builders and things being brought to the ecosystem, and just continuing to expand it. Right, just continuing peel those onion layers back. That's what I'm excited for.
Yeah, would you say that you're like very well versed? I mean, like everything that you're touching more recently has been like UTXO based tokens, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think Atomicals is still UTXO based, is it?
Yeah, that's all UTXO based with colored coins. Obviously, that one goes more off the dust limit though. So with tokens, you can't. The splitting feature is still kind of there. It's still, but yeah, it's all UTXO based. A little quicker than runes. So you don't have to go through the same steps you do like with BRC20s right now.
Yeah,
The
no,
only other thing we messed with that wasn't proof of work was Tron. When those inscriptions, everything came out in that ecosystem, when we deployed the Trixie market there. That's obviously smart contracts through that, and dealing with the Tron Foundation and that core team with NFT org and all that stuff. So yeah.
sweet man. No, yeah, keep at it. I think you're right. That there's been like an influx of builders over the last, I would say, 3 or 4 months. I think a lot of that was due to the happening and all the attention that this space and industry had over the last year or so. I think there's still more and more users coming in. Obviously, the people that have entered the tops of maybe February or March certainly are not here and not as convicted as a lot of us that have been around from lulls to peaks to more lulls to higher peaks. So I think it's just part of just being patient, right? Like one of the things that I can't stress enough is sometimes you just have to deal with this point in time of letting the market and the builders sort out where the next game is going to be built. I know we have like a lot of fractal bulls here. Businessman is one of them. Jack Liu is another. Fractal is Unisat's project or related to Unisat and BRC20. Lorenzo, obviously, as I mentioned, spoke on the Ordinal show, and he said Fractal's going live sometime in September. So I mean, that still kind of gives us about a month to maybe sit out through the lull. In the meantime, I think there's still quite a lot of progress that can be made, both on the L1, both on other meta protocols, broader expressivity. We don't necessarily have a winning L2 per se just yet. And obviously, another thing to look out for is certainly, Stacks and the Stacks Nakamoto upgrade, which to me felt like it was massively, I would say delayed. Delayed would be an
Overhyped.
yeah, yeah, overhyped as well. I think everyone expected it at the halvening when he promised it at the halvening, and that didn't happen. Then we had the whole thing kind of collapse with Alex Labs, which was very unfortunate to have a security issue and all the LPs, and a substantial amount of money being basically drained from the ecosystem. But we've also seen, ecosystems, L2s on Ethereum kind of go through, similar, I would say, hacks. Some of them have never really come back, and others, basically, bit the bullet, took it on the chin, and came back stronger than ever. But it is a massive disruption into the space when you have so much capital that was locked into a specific ecosystem. And I guess we can't necessarily, understate and how important security is. A lot of us just never leave the L1 primarily because we just, care about our assets and our security. Going to an L2 with, a multi-sig, even as elaborate as it can be, is one trust assumption. But, when you start to use the applications built on these L2s, you're taking on greater security risks, which sometimes don't warrant the risk that you take. I always think about it from like a yield perspective. If a chain is paying me 2 or 3 or 5 or 10% on my Bitcoin, but I have to go to an L2, so I have to take on the trust assumption of the L2, and then I have to take on the trust assumptions of the dApps that I'm using. That 10%, 12% sometimes isn't actually worth it, in my perspective. And it's also something that people should keep in mind when they go through these, processes. Which is why I think building as close to the L1 is certainly where you have the most amount of unlock to native Bitcoin. Even though Bitcoin OGs and whales aren't necessarily among us on the ordinal side of things and runes, and maybe that changes down the line when we do have more expressivity, or closer to the L1 levels of expressivity, and yields that make sense from a financial perspective to undertake. um, but yeah, I mean, there's just, again, I'm biased, and I'm very bullish on most builders that are building on L1 or as close to the L1 as possible, simply because it's just safer to interact on the L1. I know Robert's here. Robert, are you kind of paying attention to meta protocols, other token standards, Fractal, and so forth? Maybe I'm mid curving Fractal too much, thinking that it's just a side chain. But I think because the East and West both agree that it's the next big opportunity, I hope it's not like runes where everyone agrees on runes and it just goes downhill from there.
Yeah, I'm certainly keeping an eye out. I think what's interesting about Fractal is it's the first more closely native Bitcoin L1 that seems to be getting good traction. That is sort of like wallet and Bitcoin native, right? Like on Unisat, you just change your network similar to how you would on Ethereum with MetaMask, with the L2s over there. And obviously, we do have some of the incumbents like Stacks that have had this for a while, but at least amongst the sort of ordinal and rune communities, Fractal does seem to be getting some attention. Still trying to wrap my head around my thesis around it. So I was actually just chatting with Matt in the DMs about this for the last 20 minutes or so. But yeah, just paying attention, and it's obviously getting a lot of traction, and that's always good to see, just more interest and activity around the L1 side.
Yeah, I mean, much like pre-runes became kind of a sell the news event because we all just front ran the actual experimentation and the unlock of runes. I think Fractal will probably have some sort of, pre-Fractal mainnet collection or tokens and so forth happen on the testnet. I'm kind of curious to explore that a little bit more over the coming days from a tradable event opportunity, and just genuinely watching closely. I think a lot of people in the West obviously are Xverse users and Xverse maximalists in a lot of ways. But obviously having their own wallet has enabled them to basically build an L2 on their own, or a sidechain on their own. I think that's one of the telling trends these days for meta protocols themselves is, when a meta protocol becomes a self-sustaining ecosystem with wallets, with applications, with developers, it seems like the natural progress from a core team perspective is just to build a separate blockchain. This isn't necessarily dissimilar to how other ecosystems and environments tended to kind of pivot to building their own chain and becoming an app chain. On Ethereum, primarily, you had successful dApps then become their own app chains. You have DYDX, You have Hyperliquid, which are more so focused on like trading environments, which speed limitations on the L1 certainly limit them from like broader success because it's not Solana. But yeah, Robert, I'm curious on your take there. Do you think like when ecosystems and meta protocols like Atomicals or Track or even Glitter is another one that I'm watching closely, have the same network effects that BRC20 and Unisat did, with their communities and so forth? Do you think most of these are just going to build Bitcoin adjacent L2s or side chains? Like, do you think that really is the solution here?
Well, it's the best pitch to VCs, frankly, right? So that's hence why we've got so many of them. Everyone wants at least a stab at the fortunes that come with having a successful token-driven L2 on Bitcoin. Hence why all the EVM L2s raised at this price and so forth. But I don't think necessarily VC dollars are the greatest signal of like what will actually happen here. But we'll probably, we have a lot, with Tap and all the others and Fractal. Like what actually happens, I'm still not super convinced, other than like, Solana, like maybe it's a hot take, but I do think Solana or ETH or any of the ETH L2s would actually make a pretty good Bitcoin L2 post OpCat, which I know is not a great answer and not everyone loves this answer, but assuming the bridge is trustless, like we get quite a bit by just moving kind of to these test nets as a way to sort of semi-safely trade these assets on an L2 with performance. So yeah, I mean, certainly just considering all outcomes here, but ultimately it's just good to have all these experiments going on. So love to see that.
Hashmaster, I saw your hand up. I'm just reading your bio. You're building Odin protocol. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to hear your takes on that, and also just curious what Odin is.
Hey, Farmer. Hey, Bunzi. Hey, guys. Nice to see everybody here, even in times like this, right? So, from a system design perspective, if you look at how Bitcoin is scaling right now, we all want Bitcoin to scale vertically, right? But most of the scaling is happening horizontally. And whenever you have a consensus separate from that's different from Bitcoin, you inherently run into security budget issues, right? For example, if you lock in more Bitcoin than your consensus can handle, i.e., your validators can steal more Bitcoin than your network is worth, right? So that's an inherent problem you run with. So I'm of the camp that Bitcoin should scale vertically, and of course, there's not much you can build on those systems, right? So you have Lightning, which is directly on top of Bitcoin vertically. So that's what we're building on. So essentially, you can't do complex AMMs or perpdexes and so on, but you can do simple systems like peer-to-peer markets. So that's what we're trying to build. We're building a peer-to-peer marketplace to trade runes on Lightning.
Cool. No, love to see it. I mean, that was like one of the biggest things that was talked about very early with BRC20 and Runes is that, eventually people were just like, oh, we have to find a way to build with Lightning in mind. This is the only way that we can scale trading performant environments. And I think more recently, if I'm not mistaken, there's been a broader push for like Taproot assets. It's not something that I like, researched extensively, but it's something that I kind of, is on my agenda of to-do items. So it doesn't seem like the Lightning folks have figured a way on how to trade runes within the environments just yet, or even like BRC20, which is account-based, which makes it a little bit more difficult. So basically, when you have your own assets that are issued with Lightning, kind of Lightning native assets, let's call them, it becomes much easier because there's less complexity to focus in on. I mean, that's another place that there could be games to be played. Um, Curious because you probably know this much better and are much closer to that environment than I am. But are there any existing Taproot assets or Taproot tokens trading on Lightning, or are there marketplaces right now that people can go to?
So, yeah, they're not trading yet, but there was a soft launch of LUSD, that's a stablecoin on Lightning. I guess Taproot Assets is mostly focusing on stablecoin implementation from Lightning Labs. So they essentially want to use the Lightning Rails to have instant payment settlements. Lightning is quite interesting, right? So you have this user friction phase where you have to open a payment channel to interact with Lightning, but that's just a funding transaction, right? From that point onwards, you have instant transaction finality, you have zero cost, and you can have some privacy elements, right? So that's what caught our eye, and we basically hacked the Lightning node to implement runes onto Lightning, and essentially, we're able to move runes to a payment channel, and from that point, you can broadcast a message saying, "Hey, I hold X amount of runes. I want X amount of Bitcoin for it," or vice versa, right? And this appears on a decentralized order book, and people can basically choose to be a counterparty to that trade. And if you find a counterparty, then the trade is instantaneous. So we're also building an RFQ system where we'll be able to market make for blue chip runes that are listed on centralized exchanges, and be like the best counterparty to people trading on our exchange, like keep filling those orders while capturing ARBs on centralized exchanges. I know it's not like a tool where you see probably a lot of degen activity where you just drop a contract in a Telegram group and you find a liquidity pool and just go full ham. But yeah, it's quite useful to have a peer-to-peer exchange because we are building like a circular Bitcoin economy. And when we have a lot of Bitcoin-based assets, we're eventually going to be trading with a lot of people holding these assets in self-custody, and people value self-custody in this space. So that's the thesis we have.
Yeah, no, love it. No, appreciate the take. I mean, I guess in the last cycle, Lightning was all the rage for Bitcoin scaling. Yeah, I mean, the founder of Twitter was very bullish on Lightning and Lightning payment channels and so forth. But it feels like it's been quite a reasonably well-funded adventure, but it still is missing that like speculative angle where the users and the games can be built. And I think a lot of like a lot of everything in crypto is just based on providing people, a game to play with, at least in this point in time. And if you can't build games on an ecosystem, well, then the users never really come. Like the beauty of Ordinals was that, you're building another game because it's just NFTs on Bitcoin, for the first time ever. You could argue that it's not the first time ever with Counterparty being, the OG of all OGs, but it didn't necessarily have the same network effects, which, built up the ecosystem that we have today. And I think the part of the beauty of, Ordinals were that it gave us an ecosystem that felt like, every other, ecosystem that Web3 users have played with wallets and signing transactions and doing things in a very, native Web3 way. But obviously, over time, we're likely to move away from that experience because, to many people from, Web2 environments, that is a learning curve. Like I remember when the first time that I had to download a wallet, fund it and so forth, it felt overly complex for what it's worth. And I think, if you're coming to Bitcoin from, like a Web2 ecosystem, versus something like Friendtech, which was just very easy and I guess relatively seamless to use, and it didn't feel like the blockchain. Um, you know, I would say those environments tend to onboard people much faster. And while there are solutions being built to help that onboarding process, none of them are, I would say, very user friendly just yet. It's still quite difficult to get crypto, and most people now have ETFs in crypto, which makes it very difficult to take your Bitcoin out from the ETF and then fund your Web3 wallet, which is another I guess friction point that we all have to go through. But being on chain has always been the alpha. Bitcoin can perform as good as it can, but I have a strong bias that, Bitcoin-based assets, be it ordinals, runes, Meta Protocol-based tokens, and projects related to the ecosystem tend to outperform. And maybe I'm proven wrong, but Yeah, I think we'll have an alt season on Bitcoin. It's just, we don't really have many altcoins to begin with, other than Liquidium token today, and maybe some others, which, like BAMP as an example is another kind of altcoin on Bitcoin that I see. Zbit is another one, which is in the gaming space. But we don't necessarily have hundreds of tokens that are related to projects just yet, but it's likely to change over time. Bunzi, yeah, what's up, dog?
Dude, has anyone tried to do spaces on desktop? That shit doesn't work, but I was told it works. But yeah, Elon's too busy talking to Trump. Um, but I don't know. I think overall, it's like obviously extremely bullish. People are building and they're starting to kind of expose some of what they're working on. A lot of people keep it close to their chest and all that stuff. But now people are kind of getting their hands like called, like, hey, what are you working on? And you brought up one interesting thing, like Alec, and there's a catch 22 thing here. Like promising the world and just like doing a token first is the easiest way to build hype, build momentum. That's what people do time and time again. But if you release it and then you get these vulnerabilities, like getting those out of the way first and like projects that lead with software is going to be so important right now because someone said the first pump.fun project on Fractal, and Fractal just went to testnet, and they're like, we're the first. And it's like, dude, it's not to mainnet, so what are you talking about? First of all, second of all, where is it? You're just saying words. Like, dude, I'm the first AI like Bitcoin native, like Chat GPT that produces Canva images that also like reminds you to text your wife, and then also your wife's boyfriend. It's like, dude, I don't know. I'm just like in a very like reserved position and kind of waiting to see and work on things. And like Fractal did just release their open source. They renewed and they introduced Opcat, and like that's real. Like I pulled that down and started messing around with it. So I don't know. I think it's a really interesting time. Like everyone's thesis on Bitcoin is build on Bitcoin the addressable liquidity. It's where everything's at, and then they just fractionalize everything again. And I really, you know, it's it's going to be interesting to see who pulls away. And I think people that work with native Bitcoin assets. But I guess one question I want to propose is, does anyone know how Fractal proposes on bridging? Because and how they plan on doing like signature schemas, like if it's like TSS, or like how they plan on doing like non-custodial executions?
Honestly, I don't think Lorenzo yesterday got into that. Other than the fact that there's going to be multiple ways to bridge into the environment. Um, yeah, I mean,
But see,
I
even
think
that, like bridging, like managing assets on several chains is just not ideal. Like on Ethereum, like it was just, it's terrible. Like we're already dealing with enough assets, and now you have to toggle and remember, oh shit, I have this over there. I have this. And then by the time something happens, like, and the people that know what's going on already moved all their liquidity, you're stuck in this like fucking bridge situation where you can't actively, like get out of it. I don't know. All of this has kind of happened on Ethereum. I've had instances where it's like Arbitrum. Oh shit, I have no gas on Arbitrum. Those funds are stuck. It's a whole thing. So I don't know. That's what I'm really looking out for, is projects that are kind of considering these things rather than just leading with hype and then launching a token and then just saying like, yeah, check out the platform when it's live. Um, but I don't know. Harry's in the audience. He's one that's kind of been deep on. I want to see if he wants to come up and talk about, because he's been exploring bells too, as like a kind of hypothetical approach similar to Fractal. And like the value prop there is like half the token isn't owned by VCs. Like Binance is funding Unisat as like one of the major backers to support Fractal, which is bullish and kind of like uh it's a, I don't know, it just depends on how you view it. It's like, but I don't know. These are my thoughts. I've just been
Bunty,
pent
like,
up.
we kind of saw this with like Merlin as an L2, right? Like the Merlin kind of was conceptualized, and I guess not to say like they took advantage of, but they took advantage of the market opportunity to integrate bitmaps. Bitmaps were supposed to be, the metaverse of Bitcoin, and I'm not really sure where this metaverse exists these days, other than a text file saying, dot 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 bitmap. But yeah, apparently there was a lot of developers building metaverses, but not sure where they're at these days. So similar to how Merlin captured like the bitmap audience, the bitmap community, and the value of all those bitmap assets, which continues to be stuck in a lot of ways in Merlin's chain itself. I think Unisat is
That's the
playing.
metaverse. You're just stuck in Merlin, dude. You
I
just
mean,
go these one-way bridge hypes, like it sucks because there's such upside if you land the right one. And that's what keeps people going back to the casino is like, dude, if I just strike one of these. But what's unfortunate is people talk about onboarding, get people, but like these instances offboard people too. It's like, dude, if you lose a bunch of money, it's not a healthy environment for projects that are approaching it in a sustainable way to grow. So it's weird, but that's why I love people like Sovereign was mentioning earlier, just sticking true to the primitives and kind of meeting Bitcoin where it's at right now. And you know I'm kind of I'm doing a lot of research right now. I'm just in research phase and also just taking a lot of receipts. I'm screenshotting a lot of shit. So be careful if you're fucking like claiming that everything's there's a folder of receipts for these L2s. So and all these things because it's it's very predatory right now, in my opinion.
man, you know what frustrates me sometimes with a lot of these like adjacent builders and so forth is, there's a clear problem in the L1, and many people are already looking at like meta protocols and building ecosystems within, a very niche box, which then create more problems in the ecosystem to start solving. And rather than solving and making the L1 experience better, which I think is critical, like, I'm a big fan of OpCat, of course, but I think just having it enabled, much like Fractal has, it's not going to inspire or give the tooling necessary to properly leverage it. It still makes it very difficult to build with OpCat in mind versus something like a VM like EVM or SVM, or even coding in Rust or Solidity. That's much easier to onboard existing developers from other ecosystems to help solve the problems that exist today. And the problems that we have today is, are related to, fungibles on Bitcoin just not having the user experience that we need and desire from them. Whether we kind of create a totally different, token protocol that is better than what BRC20 or Runes already has is another kind of philosophical debate. But I'd argue that kind of needs its own meta protocol. Then you silo yourself in a separate box, and then you have to kind of recreate the momentum around it. And it's not always like the better tech that wins the game, right? Like if you have network effects that actually work, and amass a large enough community of developer interest, mindshare, and talent, that problem becomes much more worthwhile to solve than basically capturing the audience with a better standard, as an example, right? Like
Yeah.
that.
That just like reinforces my point is like, yeah, the long term solution is hard. Hyping up people with like a promise and a token and just kind of like pushing that into the main vein, which a lot of people are starting to lean into, because I do think we're going to go into a very like pivotal, important innovation phase of ordinals because we are hitting its limitations. We've you know teams have worked diligently to push as hard as it can, but the scaling issue and to unlock DeFi, which is the true one of the biggest use cases in stablecoins, that Ethereum proved, like you just can't do it. So people are just selling vaporware left and right. But there are a lot of projects that, not a lot, but there's a handful that are really, I think it's going to open a big catalyst, and we're like circling it. So yeah, if you're not paying attention, now's the time.
So the TLDR is it's all over. This is as good as it gets on Bitcoin, and enjoy the top, folks.
Yeah, enjoy the
John,
one-way bridge to Merlinville and just fucking count your Bitcoins. Goodbye. No, but
I
uh,
can give you the other side of that.
yeah, what's the other side? Merlin two-way bridge?
More than that. I just think that I think that we are also forced to think in terms of the cycles and that we've experienced before, where we get this huge sort of spike upwards, which attracts a lot of investment dollars, a lot of developer activity, and then we get hit on the head by something. Could be FUD, could be something technical, could be SBF, whatever, and the whole industry goes back into its hole, and it all becomes PvP, and we're scraping for kind of and innovation becomes just incremental. Um, I really do believe that cyclicality is about to end, simply because I think that one of the things that really drives a lot of demand for stablecoins is because people want access to a frictionless cross-border way to transfer US dollars, right? Like it or not, that is the killer app of crypto right now. The numbers prove it, right? But I think the data suggests that really the dollars days are numbered. If you have your eyes open, you're willing to look at things with an open mind and join the dots. And so, what happens then? What if Bitcoin becomes the US dollar at a much higher level, and you don't need stable coins? And also, I think in terms of the innovation cycles, I think that mass adoption is something that doesn't happen to Bitcoin incrementally. I don't think that mass adoption is something that happens by way of these kind of like speculative bubbles that come and go every 4 years. I think mass adoption happens when something fundamentally breaks in default finance that makes Bitcoin a need rather than a want. And I think we're there. I think we're going to see it pretty soon. And so I think we'll be having very different conversations in 12 months' time.
yeah, no, totally agree. Serge, what's up? I invited you to speak because you're the biggest degen I know. You've been in this space for like I guess quite a long time. You live, breathe, eat, sleep degeneracy, both on chain and off chain. What's up, my man?
Yeah, hey, Joe. What's good, bro? How are you?
I'm
Um,
good, man. I'm good, man. I see you're trying to get businessmen to block you, but apparently you can't get them to block you. And I know you've been looking at like Fractal, you've been looking at a lot of like liquid trade ideas. Yeah, what the heck is going on? What are you most excited about? Curious on where you kind of see things going. Is
not
RSIG
not
going
all,
to a billion?
not only am I trying to get blocked by a businessman, but I think he's kind of growing on me, brother. We're actually getting a little bit friendly together. I'm starting to like businessman, and he's been liking a lot of these RSIC posts recently. I'm very, 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 very excited about what these RSIC guys are producing, bro. Like, they've been silent for months, and then the room dev all of a sudden, a few days ago, just shows up, and he's like been
I
tweeting
I I,
degenerately
I
nonstop.
saw that. It felt like the dev died and then it came back to life right at the bottom and then suddenly RSIC and the RSIC miners are up like 4 or 5x, which is pretty crazy. I'm still trying to figure out who the RSIC team is and what their intentions are because it doesn't look like they're selling their tokens. They're very much part of us. They're one of us since the early days, but still trying to figure out who it is, what they're up to, what their ambitions and goals are, other than creating the most I would say slick and elusive and I guess mysterious game on L1 from like a runes and ordinals perspective in a very long time.
There's so much speculation about who the sorry guys, I just woke up from a long nap. But there's so much speculation about who the guys are behind Darsic. Some people are saying there's Casey involved, which I don't think that's true, but there's a lot of speculation, and I think that's kind of like the allure or the mystery of the RSIC devs, of the RSIC team, right? It's that allure and mystery, and they're. I think if you follow the crumbs and you go all the way back to January 2023 and inscription 126. There's a lot of these guys have been building, and honestly, despite all the FUD over the last months, over the last few months, if there was one person that really showed up and was like actively helping founders and developers in the space, and he would just like kind of like just free provide his skills and his know-how and kind of like helping devs and founders is the Rune dev. He would just show up and help you, and I haven't seen anybody in the space that has actually delivered on their promises besides RSIC, to be honest.
Yeah,
I've
but
been
if you look at Rune Dev's tweets, they kind of tweet like a Fiverr dev. So is Bitcoin
you know
really
who they're
that hard?
tweeting like, bro? You know who they're tweeting exactly like, and I've been studying this very, 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 very closely. Panda BIP. If you guys read all the
Wait.
Panda
So you're
tweets,
cross-referencing tweets and listening to tone to speculate on RSIC token.
sorry,
You're cross-referencing Panda's tweets to
to Rune
Dev.
devs, yeah, and
Wow.
All right,
they're
You look. It's like, do you
so
have like a fucking
let's
whole board with
let
red?
let's back it up a little bit. Who is Panda BIP? For everyone kind of in the audience.
So it's this very again, very degen guys, not financial advice, but it's one of these early mints on runes that I was following very closely. I'm a day one minter, accumulated a lot of these pandas. It's just a panda meme, bro. There was the croc coming out, the cats and the dogs and the rats on runes, and the panda came out. And I've been following these guys very, very closely. They produce the most degenerate memes out there, and the way he tweets, and I think he's a white guy pretending to be Chinese or something with broken English, and he tweets in a very, very peculiar manner, pretending to be like, quote unquote Chinese. And if you look at the Rune Dev tweets over the last few weeks, they're also the same kind of like broken English kind of style. And if you cross-reference them, as Bunzi said, they're exactly the same. So it's a
I
brain
don't
fuck.
know, man. I don't know about
Are
that
we at
one.
this stage of the cycle where we're
You're
fucking?
saying you're saying Arctic and Panda. How
Wait,
how
is
much
it
how
base
much base
net
Panda do
Panda?
you own, Serge? How much base Panda do you own?
A decent amount, but I'm just saying, guys, I don't want this conversation to be that degenerate, okay? But I'm
Interesting
just
way to
saying.
show your bag is just roundabout, just like, all right, we're talking about RSIC. All right,
All
Panda.
right, let's stop there. Let's stop there. Let's stop there.
All right,
But yeah, thanks.
I guess the interesting part is like which rune is actually going to get listed on Binance first, because everyone thought it was Dog, and then Leo said that a lot of the centralized exchanges are asking for token allocation, and it's not unlike Binance to ask for 2 to 5% of the supply so that they can actually market make, with it. Binance is an extremely liquid market, and having just 1% or 0.5% of, I would say the token is simply just not enough to sustain the volume that tends to come from Binance, and they need a sizable amount to market make with, and that's been like the biggest challenge with any of these fair launch tokens. I would say already presented an opportunity for these exchanges to make significantly more money, with trading fees themselves contributing to kind of the risk reward profile. Obviously, Binance also being an investor in Unisat, there's obviously advantages to, I guess, synergies by default there, which may limit them from actually listing runes tokens in the same manner of actually accumulating the supply and going down that direction. But Arctic is an interesting one because they do have token supply. they have laid out the framework, and have said, hey, like we're going to use the token supply from like the team allocation for the best interests of the public, because they're aligned. They own I believe at this point over 10 or 15% of the remaining token supply, after giving some of the team token supply to Memeland stakers, which ended up being a very valuable partnership and expanded the reach of, I guess, and the awareness at that point in time. But Serge, do you think, Binance listing is kind of near? Like, it's trading
I
in
I
insane volume.
tweeted I tweeted about that today, this morning, and I had a little birdie tell me a little something. And I don't want this conversation to turn into like anyone shilling their own bags, but I have not seen any project yet in the rune space delivering the way the RSIC guys have been delivering. And I tweeted in the morning today, as I said, there's a little birdie that told me that Binance might be is looking at at RSIC as the first runes listing.
I
Just
know,
saying.
I know who your friends are, and I would say that your sources are
Just
generally
saying.
quite accurate.
Just saying. I could be wrong, and most of the time I'm wrong, so don't listen to me. But just saying, just saying.
No, I mean, obviously that would be a massive unlock. We've seen what happens when value spills back into the ecosystem, usually to the hands of on-chain holders. Because the value of assets tends to goes up. It's like a stimulus package. Many times when you do have like an exchange listing that drives value back to the on-chain holders, which were first, front running Binance and front running centralized exchanges is, a massive opportunity for a lot of people. But it just goes to show you there's just a lot of people that aren't interacting on chain, and there's a benefit to being early and aware of like the opportunities that present themselves. Not every opportunity is going to be, of the size, scale, and, I guess, risk appetite, that makes it way all the way down there. But it is genuinely one that I think has been well managed. From like a public perspective, they didn't take any partnerships approach. They didn't go the route of Billy the Cat. They're very much, pure play in a lot of ways, which has helped the story actually. And I think that's
Eh,
part of the interesting aspect to RSIC, and why everyone keeps coming back to it despite it having, I guess,
Yeah.
nothing as a
I mean, they
product.
started the pre-mine meta. Like it they 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 did. And like silence is interesting, but the speculation, it is so crazy. Like rather than releasing a plan, like literally saying I don't have a girlfriend, like the market's more bullish on that is, it's kind of insane when you really think about it sometimes. It's like,
he was
yeah,
heartbroken. Yeah, yeah.
Dev doesn't have a girlfriend now, bullish.
Yeah,
And then
I mean,
like,
Bunzi, he airdropped $1 billion worth of economic value to holders of like the loyal holders, the early participants of the ordinals space. Like
well, I don't know if you can say he airdropped a token. Like
a
you
bit.
can't.
I'm saying $1 billion of economic value. Yes, within the token for sure. Yeah,
Well, dude, I'm about to release the same tomorrow. I can drop a token to everybody.
amazing. I'm always routing for Bunzi, guys. This guy is an absolute legend.
No, but like runes, I think are going to be a very key part for any of these L2 integrations, simply because you do need to tokenize the transfers. You need to either put them in a lock or things like that. So, and I know Sovereign, I know Farmer, you were asking earlier, and we never really got the alpha, but Sovereign with cards and what Penny's cooking up, like what can people expect with runes and kind of that gamification? Because clearly it's farming season and people are, I don't know when it's not, but is there anything you can share about cards and what's going on there?
If you love poker, you love cards. It just takes poker to another level. 10x is it with art and of the metadata that Penny has available to play with. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff happening. You'll see that there's, for example, a Rickroll card that's doing the rounds at the moment. People are still trying to figure out what that is. So I think one of the interesting things with the runes that are currently in the market, and I really like what Farmer said about the R6 story and the lore. I think they've played that game really, really well. Not only were they first and technologically proficient, but they've really managed the story around the rune really, really well. And I think that's where a lot of projects kind of fall down, and most runes are just a meme, and that's it, right? You run with that. But I think that the real depth behind a solid kind of meme or a rune that stands the test of time is really if you can build a solid lore around it, and you can keep it fun and interesting, and keep it kind of adapting at all times. I think that's what wins the race in the long run. And so, really excited about what's coming with cards. I think it's going to be something interesting that we're doing with technology, but also in the typical control way. Just going to be some really fun storytelling around it as well.
So once the dev breaks up with his girlfriend, it's gonna be super bullish. But no, I think collections starting to gamify runes. I think that's gonna be a really big meta that starts to start to emerge, because basically people just want things to speculate on. But once we start to solidify some of these technologies that allow for stable coins, like DeFi is going to massively erupt. I guess want to start kind of wrapping up and see, just kind of open the floor if any of the topics people had questions on or something you wanted to chime in, and Farmer Joe cut you off, and it's still top of mind. Um, yeah, let's hear it. Farmer Joe didn't cut anyone
Sorry,
off.
sorry. What? Yeah. No. I want to hear what the alpha is on the cards, man. Like, I got a bunch of those things. I bought them on the market. I have no idea why I bought them, but it felt right. Um, I mean,
That's exactly what you need to be doing. I mean, like it's a game that's designed to reward the degen, and so be your most degen self, and I'm sure you'll be happy. And the main thing as well is like we're trying to get everybody behind just sending a big message to Elon. Elon, basically, we created an account for No Ordinary Kind, and the amount of comments and likes were so overwhelming. They banned our No Ordinary Kind account like within 12 hours of it existing. It's a brand new account, and so please join us in sending a message to Elon Musk in whichever way you can.
Dude, didn't he just make a post about censorship? Like, he's like,
He
the
did, yeah.
worst thing about censorship, and it's like blocked, and then it's just like, oh, remember that you just continually I don't know, that's a whole interesting topic of like being, blockchain native community, and like we all, a lot of companies, even individuals, spend a lot of time on crypto Twitter just to, get it taken away. I think is such a, I don't know, it's such an interesting kind of position to be in. But I guess there's just no real solution to it yet.
but Bunty, the other part that you mentioned earlier is like, the developer influx. Matt, I wanted to kind of ask you, like, you guys are a part of the Bitcoin Olympics with BSL and a lot of other, I would say, very smart-minded, progressive Bitcoiners or L1 Bitcoiners. But what's been the turnout from like a developer angle? What are some of the things that people are, maybe pitching or building in the hackathon itself that you've seen? I guess you might be much closer to it than I am.
Actually, I haven't had a chance to kind of go through some of these initial proposals. I know our DevRel John is working with some of the teams, and there's some, synthetics and derivatives that I find personally interesting. But I would assume that all the typical type of stuff is coming through, and then we'll be able to share more as submission deadline, I guess, comes here pretty soon.
Yeah, no, love to hear that. Yeah, maybe we can get him on the show on Thursday. I think we'll kind of stagger the time slots too. We're still kind of like experimenting with 2 days a week, and which times work for everybody. So I think this time obviously is great for the Western audience, but from anyone coming from Asia and other countries in the Middle East, it tends to be a little bit harder because it's late in the night. So hopefully we'll try and do the Thursday shows. I would say 3 or 4 hours before this one to get the people going. But yeah, I wanted to just open the floor to anyone else who wanted to speak or ask questions or share musings before we kind of wrap up today's episode.
Just wanted to give a shout out to you guys. I genuinely learned some new stuff today on the spaces. It's very rare on spaces you get to do that. I think this is cool what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I know. Appreciate it. I mean, we still want to keep the vibes, native to the on-chain community, but trying to make it a little bit more educational friendly, developer friendly than some of the other shows. But yeah, appreciate the kind words. Bunsey, maybe we just wrap up this episode, maybe 5 minutes early or so, and then yeah, we can do the next one on Thursday.
Well, I got a question. How do you guys feel about Cosmos? No, I'm just kidding. But actually, has anyone successfully done a space on desktop and like talked through a mic on desktop? No? Wow. Wow.
I mean, actually,
Okay.
funny enough, if you look at Trump's speech yesterday, I believe someone was recording it in his little secret room, and he was just doing it off of his phone anyway. So, I mean, if that's the alpha, I always run these off my phone anyways, just because the desktop app tends to crash way too frequently.
Well, damn. All right. So is there going to be like an L2 for this, or what are we thinking?
Sir, all right, let's wrap up the show. Thanks for joining, everyone. Bunsey, hit it with the outro. I hope this works. Only ever after this won't be getting better from good. Might as well be already done. For what it's worth, I've said my farewells. The dollar bill will burn from me. I'm a stranger, chasing freedom and glory for my mind. I'm not crazy, baby, I'm just more than me. See control. And if you vote for me on day one, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht.